Hello Tarantula lovers, I'm Alex and you're watching Tarantula Haven. Last episode I talked about macro photography on a budget, and this episode I promised you I would show you how to make one of these, a flash diffuser, a DIY flash diffuser, so that you can do this. Okay, so on my last video, I talked about shooting macro photography on a budget, and I had this flash diffuser. This one right here was one that I made for my wife, which is why it's purple. It's got little owls on it. This one was mine, and as you can tell, the wax paper's gone from it, and I crushed it by accident. I put it in my bag wrong, and when I opened it up, it was all smushed. So I need to make myself a new one, and I figured that would be a good opportunity to show you how to make one of these for yourself so that you can do your own macro photography. So these are some things that you're going to need. To make your flash diffuser, you're going to need the following things. First of all, you need your patterns. You need a ruler or a straight edge of some sort, a pencil or a dowel rod, some duct tape, an X-Acto knife or scissors or both. You're going to need some scotch tape, some rubber cement, some aluminum foil, and some wax paper. Now the brand doesn't really matter. These are just some that I had laying around the house. So for the sake of brevity, I went ahead and cut out most of my pattern, but I will show you and demonstrate how I cut it out so that you can see that process and how it's done. But these are already cut out. This is the top portion right here. And when I do my cutting, I like to have something on the table so that I don't end up scratching or scarring the table. And I like to use a metal ruler. It doesn't matter if it's an inexpensive one or if it's, something a little bit more expensive. That's completely up to you. But you want to make sure, I prefer a metal ruler. The reason for that is because when you're cutting with an X-Acto knife, if you're using a plastic ruler, it's real easy to cut into that plastic, and then you end up nicking up your ruler and you might end up making a mistake. Same thing with the wooden ruler. Wooden rulers, it's real easy to cut into it, and again, you don't want to end up cutting yourself, and you don't want to end up cutting all crooked or anything like that. So a metal ruler makes a really good straight edge so that you can make your cuts nice and perfect. All right, so here's what I do. I go ahead and I follow the lines, and I do a little bit of an overcut so that when the lines intersect, it will cut completely through and you don't have any hanging paper. And sometimes I do a couple of lines so that it makes sure that it goes all the way through. Just like that, I've cut it out. Now that I've done that and I've got my pieces cut out, whoops, missed a little spot. Okay, so on the pattern, the solid lines are the cutting lines, and then I have dotted lines or the dashed lines. Those dashed lines are basically where your folds are going to be. One thing that you want to do on those folds, and I find this works better for me, if you want to make sure that you have nice straight edges when you do the folds, it's best to go ahead and score those lines. And I score it by using my X-Acto knife. I don't put tons of pressure on it. I just kind of use a little bit of weight on it, just the weight of the X-Acto knife itself, just to make sure that you score it a little bit. And that way when you fold it, it's got a little bit extra help there, and it will fold nice and neat. So very easily, I just run it across. And you want to make sure that you always score it on the side opposite of the direction that you're going to fold it. So I'm barely putting any pressure on it, just kind of running a line down the dotted line. And now that's been scored. So once you do that, it's going to make it a lot easier when you go to fold it. You just put a little bit of pressure there, and the paper will just kind of give way and fold nice and neat, and you'll have a nice straight edge when you make that fold. Okay, so once you have your patterns cut out, you want to separate out the main parts of your flash diffuser, and that's going to be your top, your two sides, and your bottom piece. So you have this end cap right here and what I call the rubber band hook. You want to put those aside. You're not going to need those right now. So what you're going to do next is you're going to apply the tin foil to it, the aluminum foil, and that's going to give you that reflection inside to bounce that light out the front of the flash diffuser toward the wax paper. Now you want to be careful when you do this. You want to think about what direction your folds are going to go. So in this particular case right here, the bottom, my folds are going to go forward this way. So I want to put the foil on this side. I don't want to put it on the sides away from where I'm folding because that's going to be your outside. So your folds are going to be toward the inside of the flash diffuser. Same thing with my top. My pattern's on the outside like that, and I'm going to fold them downward like this. So my foil is going to go on the inside right here. Now, as far as the sides are concerned, you want to make sure that you have your sides. They're going to go pretty much like this, right? So you want to make sure that you got foil on each inside of that. You don't want to put the foil on the same side because you might end up messing it up. So be careful how you lay those out. All right, so what I do is I go ahead and take a piece of aluminum foil and I'll set these aside right here. I'll start with the top first since that's probably the easiest one to do. And you want to lay it down with the, you've got the dull side and then you got the shiny side. The dull side is the side that's going to go down, and that's what you're going to stick to your paper. So this is where your rubber cement comes in, and you want to apply it liberally to your paper. And the reason I use rubber cement instead of other types of glue is that rubber cement is very forgiving. Rubber cement, when you put it on, it's really wet. But then of course it dries on and it's real rubbery. So if I go over like I'm getting it on my paper here on my cardboard, that's okay because once it dries, all you have to do is just rub it and it peels right off. So you don't have to worry about getting it all over the place because it's real easy to clean up. All right, so once I have that laid out, I make sure that I put my dull side down on top of my pattern. And I just kind of smooth it out. And that's where your dowel rod, or you can use a pencil. Sometimes I've used my X-Acto knife, but I have a tendency to rip it when I use the X-Acto knife, so I tend to avoid that. And I like to use a nice dowel rod. And I kind of use it like a rolling pin. And you just roll it back and forth to make sure that the glue adheres to all of the aluminum foil there. And just kind of push it out and smooth it. And once you do that, then you're good to go. And then I just turn it over. And very lightly with your X-Acto knife, just go along the edges of that aluminum foil or of your pattern, and you're just cutting into the aluminum foil. And just do it lightly. You don't have to push down real super hard because it cuts very easily. And you're just cutting out the edge of the pattern on the aluminum foil. and that's going to get rid of your excess. Just like that. And I don't really need my straight edge here because I'm just following the line. It's important that you have a nice sharp blade when you're doing this because that will make it a whole lot easier for you to cut. And what you should be left with is a shiny side like this and then your cardboard side like that. So at this point on this one, I'm going to go ahead and fold in my edges just like that. And see how nice and straight the edges turn out because I scored it. And that's exactly what I want. All right, now that I've done that, one more time, I'm going to run my X-Acto knife along the crease of the inside where the foil is. And I'm just going to pull off that strip of aluminum foil. Before this fully dries. And that's going to leave me a nice clean white edge there on that fold because this is going to stick onto one of the other sides there. So I don't want foil to be there because then it won't stick as well. This way I have a nice clean paper edge and it'll stick just fine. Alright, so I'm going to do the rest of them real quick. If you want to give your foil a once over just to smooth everything out, then I would recommend doing that. Then it comes out nice and straight, nice and neat, and you're done with one side. So I'm going to do the rest of them, and I'm not going to talk all the way through. I'm just going to do them real fast, and so that we can get to the part of where we can glue it all together. Alright, so now that you have all your pieces cut out and set up and you've got all the foil on it, you want to make sure that your sides are all nice and folded over and that they're going in the right direction, just like that. And this little piece on the bottom right here, I just flap that outward like that. It doesn't really serve any purpose. I just use it because it helps it just kind of spring up so it doesn't stay resting on top of your lens, and it just helps support that just a little bit. So anyway, at this point, this front part right here, this is just reinforcement just to kind of hold that steady and reinforce it a little bit. If you notice on this Flash Diffuser, even though it's still in good condition, how it tends to slope downward a little bit, that's because I didn't do that on this design. So I improved this design just a little bit, so I added a little bit of reinforcement there to keep it nice and straight. So later on we'll just duct tape that down. So what we want to do right now is we want to put all our sides together and start forming the actual diffuser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit more rubber cement, and I'm going to put it on nice and light. I'm not going to go overboard this time. It's already got a little bit of a coating of rubber cement, and rubber cement tends to get pretty tacky really fast. So you don't have to put tons on it. We just want it to kind of hold everything in place. And I like to start out with the top, and that's the easiest part to put together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my side and I'm going to go ahead and match it up with the edge of the inside of that fold. and just kind of fold it over and stick that side together just like that. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And don't worry if it's not sticking perfectly. Just concentrate mostly on getting your edges straight. And you can fold it over like this and then just press down. And that'll help glue it and secure it nice and neat. I'll do this side. Just like that. And this is kind of where the Scotch tape comes in. If you notice, like right here, I've got a little bit of a flap there where it doesn't stick down properly. So I just add a little bit of Scotch tape to kind of hold everything together and reinforce all that. We're going to duct tape over this, so it's not really going to mess anything up aesthetically. It'll still look nice when you finish it up. But the rubber cement's more of a way to kind of tack it down, and then the Scotch tape just reinforces that down there just like that. Alright, so I've already got my two sides going, and it's starting to come together. Now I want to add the bottom, and I'm basically going to do the same thing. Put a little bit of rubber cement on the edges. And join it up. I'd like to do one side first. Make sure that your edges match up nice and neat. And then I attach the other side. And do the same thing. And my bottoms come apart, so I'm going to go ahead and Scotch tape it just to hold that all in place. And once the glue dries, it'll hold a whole lot better. So I'll just come back on this side right here, reattach it. And then Scotch tape that down too. And that bottom piece right there is just reinforcement as well. So I just fold that inward. And the top as well. Alright, and that's the beginning of our flash diffuser right there. Only thing we have left to do is to attach the end cap right here on the bottom. And then we can start duct taping it and then work on the wax paper. Okay, so the next step is to put the end cap on, and that's this piece right here. And this is actually pretty easy. I gave it an extra long piece on one side so that you can stick it on a whole lot easier. This one was one that gave me a little bit of trouble when I first did it. So just make sure that you fold in all your flaps so that it's ready to go. And this long piece right here is going to stick down here on the inside of the top piece. And then you're going to use the rest of it to kind of stick on as well. Now, the way it's going to fit in, it's not going to go on the outside. Well, I guess it could. That might even make it easier. So let's go with that. I'm just going to make it stick onto the outside. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add some rubber cement to the flaps. And this bottom piece right here, this is just for reinforcement. Alright, and just let it get a little bit tacky. Kind of went crazy on the bottom there. And the long flap, you want to go ahead and lay that down on top, just like that. Make sure that your edges meet up nice and neat. And your two shorter pieces, just kind of fold them in like that. And then that bottom piece right there, just flap that inward, just like that. That's just a little added reinforcement there. So mostly make sure that your top piece gets stuck down. And again, you may want to reinforce with some Scotch tape just to make sure it stays in place long enough for you to get it all together. Same thing on the side. Just kind of push that down, stick it down, and this side as well. Put some tape on the flap and stick it down. Alright, so it's coming along nice now. Okay, so now that we've got all our pieces in, this little top flap right here, I'm going to go ahead and secure that. Alright, and now you're ready for the wax paper. The wax paper is probably the hardest part. I didn't include that in the patterns because it's kind of difficult to make the pattern exact for it. So I'm just going to show you what I do, and this is where the scissors are going to come in. So let me go ahead and get some wax paper. And what I do is I lay down the front of the flash diffuser and I just kind of lay it down on top of the wax paper. And you gotta kind of hold it in place a little bit, and I take the scissors and I run it along the edge of the flash diffuser just to basically trace out the shape of it. And I don't know if you can see that right there, but I've traced out the shape of the flash diffuser, and then down at the bottom I'm just going to take my straight edge and kind of connect the dots and run a line very lightly across the bottom of the shape of the flash diffuser. Alright, so now that gives me the shape of the front of the flash diffuser. So here's the tricky part. It's going to take a little bit of artistic skill on your part, but you're going to cut this out using scissors. And what I do is I tend to cut out just up to the corners where I created the line there. You're just basically scratching the wax paper so that you can see it. And take the scissors and just go right to the corners like that. And you're almost making like a cross shape with the wax paper. Alright, just like that. Okay, and you could fold in on the areas where you scratched in the wax paper, and it should fold in nice and neat because you've already scratched it, kind of like scoring it. It doesn't really matter how neatly you do this because you're gonna kind of pull it tight once you put it onto your flash diffuser itself. Alright, and then I just kind of cut those flaps a little bit shorter. I give myself about maybe 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. Alright, so that you have a shape that looks like this. Okay? And I take that and I use some Scotch tape. And I don't want to put it on my cardboard because I don't want stuff getting on the Scotch tape. But what I do is I'll take some tape along the top part of this cutout. So there, I got some tape there. And then I'm going to put it on the front of the Flash Diffuser, and I'm going to match up the edge of that scratch that I made on the wax paper. And then just tack it down. Just like that. And then I take the bottom piece and I do the same thing. I take some Scotch tape and I put it along the bottom of that wax paper. And if you start to mess up a little bit, it peels right off the Scotch paper pretty easy, or wax paper pretty easily. Alright, so once I get it on there, I just stretch it a little bit taut and then tack that down so that it's nice and straight and you've got kind of a tight fit on your wax paper. And then I'm going to do the two sides. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to put some wax paper or some Scotch tape on the wax paper right there. Make sure it fits nice and straight. And just tack it down. And then the final side. Just like that. So now you have the front of your Flash Diffuser done. It's all tacked down nice and tight. Fits like a drum. And you're ready to start duct taping. Okay, the cool part about using duct tape is it kind of helps waterproof it a little bit because your duct tape has a plastic finish to it. And the other thing is that duct tape now comes in all kinds of different colors, designs, and so on. I made this one out of this purple duct tape with owls all over it for my wife, and I like the camo one because you know, I go out in the field and usually I do most of my picture taking there, so I just figured that would look better that way. So that's completely up to you. There's all kinds of neat different types of designs for duct tape. So what I usually like to do is I like to start out with the end cap. And I use scissors on it. I know you can rip duct tape and it rips nice and neat, but when you use scissors, it keeps it a whole lot neater, and I tend to be a little bit of a neat freak when it comes to doing things like this. So I like my edges to be nice and straight, and I don't like them to be ripped up and messy. So I cut out a little piece there, and I just add it to the end cap, just like that. And that starts me off. And then from that point forward, I usually like to do the bottom first because that's going to leave any kind of uneven edges on the side over here. And then when I do the top, then those are going to be hidden and all your uneven edges are going to be toward the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and duct tape this, and I'm going to do this kind of quickly, but you get the gist of it, and you can do it however you want to as long as you have the whole thing covered with duct tape. So there you go. Now I have a replacement for my old squished Flash Diffuser, and I've got a nice new one that's nice and straight and ready to go again. And it's real simple to use. All I do is take it and slide it over my pop-up flash, and I take a rubber band and I hook it through the viewfinder, or I hook it onto the viewfinder, and then loop it over the hook at the top, the rubber band hook, and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go outside and take some awesome macro photos. So that's my video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry I didn't have more tarantulas on it, but that was the focus of this video. Next time I promise you I'll have some more, and I'll talk about some more tarantulas. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. So until next time, keep loving them tarantulas.